Welcome back, time to newcomers alike, to Pokemon Volt White 2. Yeah, as you guys that unfortunately saw this episode being put last night up. This is a great post commentary so far, I gotta tell you that. If you saw the episode of this I put up last night, the audio got corrupted. And that was because I got a new webcam and I forgot to install the drivers, so audio was jumpy. That just sucks. So what we're doing in this video is we're going to head up to Celestial Tower, fight some trainers there, get some levels, because we are going to greatly need it for Skyla, because we are pretty under-leveled for that, I suppose. As you see, we're fighting this breeder here, and we've got Chimeco, one of the worst psychic types ever. I know, because I use it in my crap Pokemon run that I need to put up more episodes of, but I don't care, because screw you. Yeah. God, post-commentary is harder than normal commentary. Has anybody seen The Hobbit yet? I've seen The Hobbit. I saw The Hobbit tonight. I thought it was a fantastic movie. Maybe I should just do a quick review of that real quick. Non-Pokemon related, but it's awesome. Quick spoiler-free review of The Hobbit. Do not, first of all, do not compare it to Lord of the Rings. Because it may have the same characters in it, like Gandalf and, at the beginning, even, Frodo and, Pippin. But it is not Lord of the Rings. It compares a completely different story and tone. This movie, it's a lot of fun. It's like if you took one of those classic RPG games like Neverwinter Nights or even Skyrim, or those Elder Scrolls games, then that would be this movie. It's a classic RPG game, but it's a movie, essentially. Like, you can go through the whole movie naming out the moves that they're using. They even give the weapons names in this movie, which is kind of funny. Which is another thing that made it very RPG game-like, giving the weapons names like, Goblin Cleaver, or some crap like Fellhammer, or, Glowing Sword of Giant Spaghetti Monster. You know, that kind of thing. They gave those names. So you can go through this movie, besides that, even, like, giving all the characters, like, jobs, like you would in, a normal RPG game. Like, in this case, Bilbo would be the thief, but he's a very low-leveled thief, obviously, because he doesn't know what the crap he's doing, so he's like a level 2 thief. Gandalf is, of course, like the level 70 wizard with the, humongous amounts of magic and agility. Go figure. Let me talk about Bilbo real quick. Martin Freeman plays a fantastic Bilbo. Like, if you've read the book, and I mean, I had it read to me, actually, when I was like 12 years old, so I don't remember a lot of it, but I do remember some of it. Martin Freeman plays a fantastic Bilbo, actually. Like exactly how you would imagine Bilbo being in the books. I really like his Bilbo. It's like the guy who's kind of stayed in his own little box his whole life. But then Gandalf comes along at the beginning and is like, "Hello, Bilbo Baggins. Do you want to go on an adventure?" And Bilbo's like, "No, there's no time for adventures." But then they go on an adventure, and he's like, "Yay!" And he goes through this big old character change where he gets braver and saves somebody's life. I'm trying not to spoil that for you. It's kind of hard in the review, but, you know, he gets a lot of character improvement in this movie, despite it only being the first one, which I find very interesting. Gandalf in this movie? Awesome as usual. Ian McKellen is, like, the freaking perfect Gandalf. Most perfect Gandalf ever. You couldn't pick a better person to play Gandalf than Ian McKellen, you know. He's Gandalf and Magneto. Ha 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 ha. Sucks to be you when he's fighting you, I guess. But yeah, Ian McKellen is as great as usual at Gandalf in this movie. He's what a Gandalf should be, you know. He's the leader that has all the power, he wants to get things done, you know. He has things that he has to get done, and he wants to improve the quality of the world and the quality of people. And part of the reason it seems like in this movie that Gandalf goes after Bilbo is because first of all, he knew Bilbo was a kid, they mentioned. And he was a very curious kid, but then he kind of turned into a shut-in. Somebody that was comfortable in his own box. So Gandalf was the guy who's just like, "Hey, let's go on an adventure," like I said earlier. I mean, putting him out of his box. One of the downsides of this movie in Gandalf's case, though, is that the battles in this movie, they rely too much on Gandalf just leaving and coming back in the end and saving everybody, just like that. It happens a few times in this movie, like 2 or 3 times, and by about the second time, it's just like, okay, can't you guys fight for yourselves? Why do you keep needing Gandalf, you know? It's kind of ridiculous. But Gandalf's good as usual. You also have Gollum. Gollum's also in this movie. If you read the book, you know the part where he's at, where Bilbo finds him and gets the ring and everything. But Gollum, wow. Like, if you thought Gollum was good in the first Lord of the Rings movie, he's even better in this movie. Like, he steals the show. I guess what I'm about to say is a little spoilerific, so, you know, just don't listen if you don't want to hear it. But what happened was, if you remember in the Lord of the Rings movies, Gollum is obviously schizophrenic. He has the evil side and he has the good side. And in Lord of the Rings, you know, what they would usually do, they would have him looking in the water and then just changing his facial expression to go from good to evil, or going behind a tree or something like that. In this movie, it's like they perfected it. It's like down to the shadow, you know, like he'll be looking at Bilbo and then his face will go through a shadow and he'll be the good one, and then he'll go back through the shadow and he'll be the bad one. It is done very well. Gollum looks fantastic. Like, his skin texture is much improved, and he has a lot more, he's a lot more realistic because his facial expressions are more fine-tuned, I want to say. And of course, Andy Serkis plays him very well. I really wish Andy Serkis would win an Oscar, to be honest, because he's great. You know, he almost won one for playing Caesar in Rise of the Planet of the Apes. I was hoping he would, but he didn't, you know. But yeah, very talented guy. Gollum, like, steals the show, and, if you guys have read the book, like I said, this is kind of spoilery, so if you don't want to hear it, don't listen. Bilbo basically gets trapped in a cave. He gets trapped in a cave with Gollum, and he tells him, hey, if I beat you in a game of riddles, will you show me the way out? And Gollum's like, sure, yes, Hobbit says. Yeah, you know, like Gollum usually is. And of course, he doesn't know what Baggins is at this point. All he knows is that he's hungry, and Baggins looked like a good chunk of meat. Like, obviously Gollum's a cannibal in that case. Well, I mean, I guess he wasn't really a Hobbit originally. He was kind of a Hobbit ancestor, but still, I would call that cannibalism. Anyways, so they go through this big riddle thing, and I'm kind of surprised that Gollum could even answer any of the riddles that Bilbo is asking him, honestly. You know, because it's freaking Gollum. It's like, why? Your brain is mush. How do you know any of this stuff? You're freaking Gollum. So, you know, they go through all these riddles, and then, I should mention this, before, Bilbo actually comes in contact with Gollum, he fights with an orc, and they both fall down this hole, and that's how he gets in the tunnel. Gollum takes the orc to go and eat it, and drops the ring out of his loincloth. I don't know where he was keeping it in his loincloth. I don't even probably want to know, but he drops the ring, and Bilbo finds it, and he takes it. He's like, pretty ring, so he puts it in his pocket. So the last thing that happens is Gollum said, go ahead, Hobbit, ask us a questions, or something like that. And Bilbo is like, okay, what's in my pocket? So, you know, he says, okay, Gollum, you get 3 guesses. Guess what's in my pocket? And Gollum's like, Hans's? Is it a knife? And then, you know, he goes through the 3 guesses, and Bilbo's like, nope, you lost. Show me the way out. And he's like, found! And, you know, through all these, he's going through his, you know, good and evil phases, like, we should kill him! No, he is nice, Hobbit! We just lost the game! We need to get... He is nice, Hobbit! We should get him out of here! You know, that kind of thing. But then, when Gollum realizes that his ring is gone, he goes absolutely crazy and chases Bilbo down through the tunnel in a blood rage, trying to find his ring because he figures out that Bilbo has it in his pocket. My god, that scene is so tense. But, here's what happens, and this is the spoilery part, so don't listen if you don't want to hear this. The ring falls on Bilbo's finger, you know, like in Lord of the Rings when Frodo like falls and the ring flies in the air and then just randomly lands on his finger. I don't know, it's got some kind of magical power to be able to do that or something like that. But it lands on his finger and he becomes invisible. So he manages to sneak past Gollum, and Gollum's looking around like, where's my precious? I'm going to kill the Bagginses! You know, that kind of thing. And he's looking around and he's like, I can't find it. And Bilbo just kind of watched him for a while, and Gollum gets all depressed looking, like you feel really bad for him. It's just one of those moments where you're like, this guy's disgusting and his mind is messed up, but I really feel bad for him because the ring is really all he had, and now he doesn't have it anymore. And he has just this expression on his face. It's like, wow. And what happens is Bilbo's still invisible. He goes up to him and he raises his sword to try to slash his head off or whatever, and then he just kind of looks at his pitiable expression and just kind of drops his sword and decides to spare him. And it's like, wow, you know, Bilbo could have just ended it right there and just left, and it wouldn't have made a difference because it's Gollum, but he spared him because he felt bad for him, because, you know, he's basically taking, for some reason, I guess the ring has power over him at this point, the only thing that Gollum has. So then Gollum realizes he's invisible and tries to attack him, and Bilbo, like, drop kicks him and leaves. So that part of the movie, that was probably the best part of the movie, the interaction between Bilbo and Gollum. That was just great. And I'm kind of annoyed we probably won't be seeing, because if I remember the book correctly, you don't really see Gollum in the rest of the book, other than that point, until Lord of the Rings. And I wish we could, because Gollum is great. Great. Even better than before. It definitely deserves an Oscar for that role. Now, other characters in this movie, Saruman's in this movie. We have other wizards in this movie, which is interesting, other than Gandalf. Like, Bilbo asks Gandalf, well, how many other wizards are there? And he says 5. Can't remember the name of 2 of them, of course. And the other 2 that he remembers are Saruman, of course, who is the High Wizard. He's supposed to be the best one. And this guy named Radagast, who's this really, like, I love this character. He's hilarious. He's like this really creepy, like, nature guy who only hangs around with animals, really. And his brain is turned to mush because he's eaten too many mushrooms, according to Saruman. It's kind of a funny scene when Saruman has to explain that. Guy's eating too many mushrooms, and he has a sleigh that gets pulled by giant rabbits. You know, and what happens with him is, he's, like, what happens with him? You meet him, and he's just a crazy guy. Crazy, hippie, nature guy. He senses something's wrong in the forest, which in this movie turns from Greenwood to people started calling it Mirkwood, which I believe is where the Ents are in Lord of the Rings. I could be wrong there. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct on that. Yeah, he goes to an abandoned fort, and which they give a couple of small Lord of the Rings references, like one of the statues that looks like a ring wraith kind of moves. He goes to this fort and he discovers there's like a necromancer there. And of course Saruman, when he's sitting down, there's a scene where Saruman and Saruman's a good guy in this movie, by the way, because this is before he went all corrupt and tried to kill everybody. But Saruman and Gandalf are sitting down in Rivendell and just talking over what's happening, because Gandalf kind of wants his approval to continue the quest to do what the dwarves need to do in this movie. So they're talking, and it's a very tense situation because, you know, well, Saruman's, you know, if you watch Lord of the Rings, that Saruman's planning something. So it's like, and he's still, you can tell at this point in this movie that, like, he's been corrupted already. He's already planning something because he's trying to make it so that Gandalf's quest is kind of sounds pointless, so he won't do it for some reason. It's interesting seeing Saruman as a good guy, I must say, even though he's clearly planning something. So that was a very interesting scene. Elrond, Hugo Weaving as Elrond is brilliant as usual. He has more emotion in this movie than I did in the other one. A couple of the flaws in this movie, I have to say. One of them, I already mentioned, which was Gandalf coming in way too much at the last second and saving everybody. He's done that 2 or 3 times. And the other one is there's all these creatures that'll just randomly show up in the movie, and somebody will go, "Hey, look, it's that!" And then some kind of, like, disaster will happen, something like that, to transition them to a different area. And then it's just never mentioned again, you know? It's like, where did this creature come from? Why is it here? Why are these huge stone giants pelting each other with rocks? You know, it doesn't make any sense to me. You know, it's kind of like an ADD thing, just when they're like, we need to transition for something. Hey, let's put some stone giants here. That'll be fun. That way we can transition them into the tunnels with the goblins and everything. Yeah, so That was another flaw with the movie. Other than that, this movie was quite fun, I must say. Quite fun. What a great adventure. Don't compare it to Lord of the Rings. Oh, and speaking of goblins, I need to see somebody, those of you that have seen this movie have seen the Goblin King, I need to see somebody do a parody combining the Goblin King with the scene from Men in Black where Will Smith goes, "It's a Balchinian!" Because that's what he is. I mean, when they were doing the scene with the Goblin King, that thing that was hanging on his chin was just so distracting, that whole scene. Like, I couldn't even, like, I wasn't even paying attention to what he was saying. I was just like, what is that disgusting thing? Like, it's not even a double chin. That's like an extra chin that somebody could put another face on. It's that big. Like, my God. Insanity, man. So, and they've got another scene where they're going through the goblin mines and killing off all these goblins, and Gandalf, you know, fighting the Goblin King and all this other stuff. And that's a really good scene. What that scene reminded me of, because they were owning so badly, the dwarves and Gandalf, these poor goblins, you know, killing off this entire tribe of goblins really easily, you know, without much effort. What it reminded me of is when you're playing an RPG game, here's the RPG game thing again, and you skip a particular quest early on, like you skip one of the beginning quests, and then you go through a bunch more of the story, come back to that beginning quest, which is like for level 5 things, and you're like level 40, you know. It reminded me of like level 40s doing a level 5 quest, how easy it is to just like rage through everything and then get the treasure at the end, you know. It's all so easy. That's what that reminded me of, that whole scene there. That was a fun scene. Which brings me to another point. The 3D in this movie, you don't need it. You don't need 3D in this movie. This is an establishing movie. I'm not saying that it's slow, because it has its fair share of action scenes, but it's like most of the movie is establishing character and plot, which is a lot of inside Bilbo's house, so you really don't need 3D at those points. The only 3D you'll need is in the action scenes, like when the stone giants are fighting each other and the mountains cracking and inside the goblin mines and all that stuff. That's when the 3D comes in handy. But I would save your money for the next 2 movies, because the next 2 movies are going to be when all the action starts. Smaug's going to wake up, craps are going to go down. Smaug wasn't in this movie until the end, by the way. Like, you see his eye and that's it. They're kind of saving the dragon reveal for later, it seems. But, yeah, you don't need 3D in this movie, but let's see what else to go over. The dwarves are alright. It's interesting seeing the dwarves. The problem with the dwarves, and this isn't even a problem with the movie, because it's how it is in the book, but the dwarves, there's too many of them. You know, it's hard to tell who's who in the group. I mean, at least you know the main guys, like, you know Thorin, who's the leader. He is very obvious to pick out. And you know Balin, who's the older dwarf, who's from ages ago, just because he's the older dwarf and he's mentioned a lot. And you know Gloin, because he's the big fat dwarf. He's the other memorable one, and he's also Gimli's father, if you know the genealogy. But, yeah, I mean, most of the dwarves aren't memorable, honestly. So, yeah, I mean, I've wasted, 18 minutes into this, I've been talking about this Hobbit movie, and you guys are probably getting really annoyed because you're just like, oh, we didn't see Pokemon, I don't care, well, you can watch. This is just Celestial Tower anyways, what do you care? But, yeah, if I were to give The Hobbit a rating, I would probably give it an 8.5 out of 10, like, it was a fantastic movie, but it had those couple flaws, like I said, that really impacted it. And I really, one of the other things I liked about this movie is it really went into Lord of the Rings lore. Like, explaining the witch, they explained a little bit of the Witch King. The one thing that was not explained was that, where all these weird creatures went between the 60 years in this movie and the Lord of the Rings. There's a 60-year gap, but where did all these creatures go? It's like, you don't see any mountain trolls, all the goblins and wargs are different. My only guess is that maybe in The Hobbit they went to a different area than Lord of the Rings, and that's why all the creatures look different. I don't know. I don't know. And one other minor flaw in this movie that was also a flaw in Lord of the Rings, Gandalf can summon eagles. So you couldn't just fly the eagles all the way to Lonely Mountain. You have to walk there, you know. I mean, in Lord of the Rings, well, actually, in Lord of the Rings, it was much less of a plot hole, because you think if an eagle tried to take the ring all the way to Mordor, it'd probably come corrupted to its power or get killed or something like that, but in this movie, all you gotta do is ride him to Lonely Mountain. You don't have to walk through the dangerous forest or anything. So, I mean, that's kind of a plot hole. It's like a Deus Ex Machina, as my friend explained it, like one of those factors where people just come in, where something just comes in and saves everybody. Gandalf was a big Deus Ex Machina in this movie. But so are the Eagles, of course. Final thoughts on this movie, like I said, 8.5 out of 10 because there's some small flaws. It's a great movie. It establishes all the characters pretty solidly. It's got a Lord of the Rings feel, but it's not Lord of the Rings, so I can't once again compare the two. It's some of the most fun I've ever had in a movie. The 3D effects are done really well if you do choose to watch in 3D, but they're unneeded. The story's great because, of course, it's based off the original book, and it's done very well. And it's just a wild ride, man. It's a wild ride of a movie, I'll tell you what. Definitely recommend seeing it. I don't know if you would understand a lot of it. You'll definitely get a bigger kick out of it if you've seen the Lord of the Rings movies first. For the love of God, go watch Lord of the Rings if you haven't seen it. I mean, those are some of the best movies out there, if not the best. They're my favorite movie series, at least. So I was geeking out through this whole movie, not only because it reminded me of classic RPG games, but also because they made a lot of hints to what was happening in the Lord of the Rings movies, especially in that scene where Gandalf is talking to Sauron, and Saruman, and you know he's planning something at that point. So definitely go see it. Now back to Pokemon. It looks like I've got quite a ways through Celestial Tower here. What am I doing? Oh, I just got this Covenant, or I don't even know what that does. I mean, if somebody could tell me what that does, that would be awesome. You've all listened to me rant about the freaking Hobbit up until this point, so if you haven't stopped watching and you're still here, I appreciate it. Otherwise, you have ADD. Just saying. So let's fight this Psychic until the end of the video. Yay! Let's do this crap. Speaking of which, Celestial Tower going through here is actually pretty pointless at this point. I mean, I think the game wants you to actually go through Skyla first. Hey, look at Reuniclus. Reuniclus. This is like beating Tyson all of a sudden. Fantastic. Yeah, but, it's like they want you to beat Skyla first. So you can go all the way to the top and ring the bell, but it's not going to make any difference, I found out. I'm trying to avoid spoilers for this game, so I don't really know what happens in Celestial Tower this time around. I'm looking forward to finding out, though, I must say. So as you can see, I'm using Swagger on this Reuniclus. So because it's a special attacker, and I know raising its attack is not really going to help it that much. I mean, Swagger seems to work the best on special attackers anyways, and it keeps hitting itself, so I'm like, haha, screw you and your Reuniclus, Tyson. You will die. Haha. Darn it. There we go. And level 45 for Bastard Don. That Lucky Egg really has come in handy this whole episode if you've been paying attention, of course. And yeah, what are we doing here? We're switching Meatball to front because I want to get him to level 45. That's what I'm trying to do with everybody, get him to level 45, because that seems like around the level that I'll be able to stand a chance against Skyla. I may have Bastard Don, and I may have, God, who else do I have in here? Oh yeah, Tesla Mouse, but she's got a lot of fail-safes, especially Earthquake. I'm sure she has something with Earthquake, maybe on her Gliscor or something like that. It's like about 30 seconds left in this video. I'm not gonna bother, like, commentating through the second part of this. I did my Hobbit review, I did a little bit of Pokemon. I think that's good for this part of the video. Rate, comment, subscribe, favorite, and see you guys next time.